Good afternoon. This is Georgia Peachcast coming to you from Cherokee County, Georgia. And this is Pat.
And I'm Greg.
And I have to find something to say that I have to say first. We were going to get into, and we will get into kitchen table economics.
Wait a minute, you promised I'd be first.
What's that?
I'm just kidding you.
Okay, you're allowed to do that. But there's something I have to kind of lead into or follow up on. We finished up our second episode last week on uh, DEI. And the DEI this past week has just continued to get even worse considering what it was doing. I ran across a story about Emily Perez, was the first graduate of color that died in Iraq and killed in an IED in September 12th of 2006. She was the top of her class. She was the first black female officer in the U.S. military history to die in a combat and the first female graduate of West Point to die in Iraq. And there was apparently a video of her story and of her life that was on the U.S. I guess the Pentagon website, and they have deleted that, and they've deleted it specifically because she was a woman of color. She was black, as they have done a few other things, including stories about Jackie Robinson and about Native Americans who were the code talkers.
Yeah, the Navajo code talkers.
Yeah, who without any of those had not wouldn't have won the Pacific. They were able to communicate and keep the our military communicating without the Japanese picking it up. All of those stories and many more. I don't know how many more have been wiped out of off the books because of the DEI craze that's going on. Please just keep tuned. Watch out. I don't.
Yeah, I'm just going to say one thing here. I think that for all those people out there who call themselves patriots, if you can hear about this and you can know that this is going on, that they are deliberately eliminating the stories of our fallen heroes, all because of the fact that they may be women, they may be Native Americans, they may be, a person of color, that should make you so incensed. There are so many people that clothe themselves in false patriotism, and I don't know how you can call yourself a patriot, call yourself a true American, and find out that this is happening and not be completely pissed off. Just saying.
Yeah. It's an excuse by Trump to erase 250 years of our history. And then who are you and who are we without our 250 years of history?
This what's going on with DEI is just the tip of the iceberg because the policies of this administration are reaching down into every person's life. This week's podcast topic is, kitchen table economics. And while our recap of last week and, the realization of what's going on that we just discussed is very important, it ties into the things that we are trying to decide to do every day, which is how do we feed our children, feed ourselves, have a roof over our heads, and have the feeling that we're not just hamsters on a wheel, that we're actually getting ahead.
If we don't do that, we're going to individually we will lose our minds, our souls. So you're right. We have to get down to living day to day, take care of ourselves, take care of our family, and economics at the kitchen table and around the table, and all of the economics to run a household and a family. We still have to has to go on, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah, in a poll that was conducted in the USA, the United Kingdom, and Canada by the Forrester Group, there was only 25% of the people polled, and the sample size I think was well over 1,000 people, uh, feel like their personal situation is, not going to be better in 2025 than it was in 2024. A third of the respondents felt that 2025 is going to be worse for them financially than in 2024. So, the idea that people are sitting around the table over dinner with their family and feeling like next year is going to be better than this year, with the uncertainty that's being
No.
drilled into us.
No,
So,
no signs of that.
yeah,
Not at all. People, and I personally know, have run into people who have not, who won't travel because two reasons. One is because of the cost, and the other is they don't know the conditions of what they're going to be in trying to fly or going to countries. One couple I knew were canceled their trip to Italy because to Ireland, not Italy, it was Ireland. But anyway, she's didn't want to go into Europe being an American. They were going to, as a couple, or they were going with another couple, they were going to wear soccer shirts that were indicating they were either a German or another one, just so that they wouldn't be taken as Americans.
so yeah,
Which
blend
is
in.
scary, but it's the truth. It's a true story.
I mean, I do that when I travel overseas too. I mean, I don't want to be the loud, belligerent American
No,
wearing, flamboyant clothes everywhere I go. But the reasoning for that when I did that, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, is totally different than that.
yes, that's right. Yeah,
Okay, that was just
you
because
didn't want to be
I like
American.
to fly under the radar naturally.
Yeah. And my
So,
comment back was that that's not necessarily to be worried about. Europe is backing us. Europe is in a lot of cases like the Canadians are feeling sorry for us. So it's not a bad idea to say that you are Americans and you don't like what's going on back home because they'll probably give you definitely a pass. I know that the Canadians
well, the
seem to
Canadians ain't happy because they booed the American team on the hockey rink when
yeah.
our national anthem was
So
playing.
we know the
Now they were polite about it. They waited until
I
the
know.
last third of the national anthem to do it, but they had no hesitation about booing. When the part of the anthem that says, "Land of the free and home of the brave," they were just like, "Not anymore," and
Yeah.
that's the part where they booed. And pessimism is starting to creep in, and that is an insidious thing. It's one thing to me feel guardedly optimistic, right? I mean, if you feel guardedly optimistic, you're like, yeah, things are a little tough right now, but I know they're going to get better,
Yeah.
right? Pessimism, whole different ballgame. That's when you're starting to think it's not going to get
Yeah.
better,
And people are doing,
you
people
know?
are not doing things, not spending money because they are pessimistic at this point in time.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, okay, we'll live through this and it'll be get better in 6 months from now, or it'll
Well,
be,
I think we're going to live through it. But the question is, it's the age-old American question. Will my kids be better off than I am?
no. They're,
That's the American dream. The American dream isn't just having the car, having the house. It's will my kids have a better life
uh,
than I did?
all in numbers right now. People have been
Yeah.
saying that's not the case already. And that was under the present conditions that we've been living in and going through COVID and then the downturn. And but this is just increase it to a level beyond the point
Yeah.
where, and I know my concern is for my children and my grandchildren that they're not going to have the opportunities that I've had.
Yeah.
In my
Well, not
case,
not just the opportunities, but the quality of life,
yeah,
the standard of living. And so and I think that feeling of I've got to guard things for the future is
well,
getting more and more
yeah.
pervasive.
When I grew up, and you too,
So
you're close enough to me to remember that at back in the early days, on a single parent salary, people were buying houses, buying cars, and saving money. That doesn't exist anymore.
No, that didn't exist in my family when
It
I grew
doesn't
up.
exist
You know, my mom and dad both had
doesn't
jobs.
exist in any of my children's families.
Now, having said that, my dad's job at GE Aerospace, did afford him the ability to pay all the major bills. That was his job.
Yeah,
Like he paid the mortgage, he paid for the car he needed to go back and forth to work. My mom working at the clinic for pittance, you know, but all the money she made went into the fun stuff, right?
yeah,
So, you know, she paid for the camping trips that we did. She paid for the car she needed, which happened to be the station wagon, which was, let's face it,
yeah,
that was our generation's sport utility vehicle.
yeah. And you're
You know,
you're a generation below me.
yeah.
I was able to do it with
So,
my wife with four children, and my wife never working,
uh-huh.
never
But,
working.
for us to get through school, my parents had to take out
Yeah,
guaranteed student
yeah.
loans, and that
But
set them back for their retirement. But point is they were able to work hard, not, the way that people have to work now, 40, 60 hours, not 40, but 60, 70 hours a week, but just a standard work week and have enough to
yeah,
raise their kids, have a good time as a family. We weren't rich in monetary wealth or goods, like we had a very modest house, but we were rich in family experiences, the things we could go off and do together. And I can't even see some families being able to afford that kind of life. Consumers are guarding themselves against the uncertain future. They're starting to tighten their belts. And when
and
you're looking at,
so many of them don't know if they're going to have a job.
well, yeah, and
How many,
it's
you and
not
I
just
both
that.
know.
It's
We already know people that have lost their jobs, and
yeah.
and more are coming.
Well, and when you look at the broad-based tariffs that are being enacted, you're looking at, my wife and I were planning on redoing our kitchen, putting in stone countertops and getting a new stove. And because I'm kind of the cook in the family and I love to cook, and our stove is gradually falling apart and it's time for a new one. But I was just at Lowe's the other day, and the guy I happened to just mention tariffs, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, you better buy that before those tariffs do, because
Yeah,
all these appliances have parts from China and Taiwan and Mexico and all over the
yeah,
place." And he said they're going to go up like
yeah.
20%.
Yeah. Trump has taken it to another level
So,
as far as the cost of things and what we're going to allow ourselves to have and not have. Back to your point, what you may
mhm.
not have if you don't do it quick enough. In my case, there were some thoughts and plans to do some travel that I'm holding back on doing right now
Yeah,
because I just don't know, you know, what's going to be out there in another even 6 months. From it's too scary, and if it's scary for me, and
yeah.
I'm in a reasonable
Like
position to
I
do
don't
that.
I don't worry about travel inside the United States.
No,
That
no,
doesn't bother me.
that's
I
okay.
mean, I just went to Colorado to have some
But
time with some friends. But
to that point, I've got a daughter that is planning to take a trip with other friends to go to 5 national parks. She doesn't know, and you and I
yeah,
don't know if those national parks are going to be open,
don't even know if they're going to
and
be open.
that's domestically.
Now that there was that judge's ruling this past week
Yeah,
that did put all those people back on the books. But then again, who's to say they're going to stay on the books?
yeah,
The uncertainty level, if you're as a family, if you're looking at planning a trip to go see 5 national parks, like we did when we went out and saw what's called the Grand Circle, Grand Canyon, Moab, Zion, you go in a circle in the desert up there in Utah and Colorado, and you get to see like 5 or 6 national parks.
yeah.
Well, now you don't even know if those parks are going to be open.
And even if they're
And
open, they're going to be understaffed. They're going to be really bad trouble right now. But
mm,
that's even domestically. So the travel, back to your point, even domestic travel is kind of tenuous from the standpoint of, do we really go ahead with the plans? Are they going to be open? Are they going to be working? And the other scary thing, you talking about the judge, that came up again today a couple of times. Okay, they're ignoring what judges are saying.
yeah,
Okay,
because they don't believe the law applies to
yeah,
them.
I know.
Trump has been told by the Supreme
and
Court that the
and
law doesn't apply to him
that's right.
as president. He can do
So
whatever he wants.
at this point in time, I was saying it to myself, and I was really concerned about it. Actually, you've got the president of the United States saying, "I don't need Congress, and I don't need everything right up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, he wants to
Don't need
rule
them.
by fiat.
I don't need
He wants to rule by his pen. And it's starry. Now, I understand your concern about the judges, but that is actually scarily our last bulwark against
them. I know.
wanton destruction in this country by an administration and a group of henchmen and women who don't care about our country's, legacy. The idea that we are the land of the free, which means we're
Yeah,
all supposed to be free, not just a tiny group of us, but all of us.
yeah. We
You know?
thought we all grew up, and we thought we had three branches of government with the purpose to be able to make sure that none of those three worked to the point that it was against the American people, that the American people were covered because we had three branches of government that were to balance the checkbook and balance everything else that went along in making the laws. And now we're worried that there's only one of those branches of the government that's got
Yeah, and
no
it's
checks on it
not even
whatsoever.
the branch at the
I'm,
top.
I'm
It's
worried.
all of the
Yeah.
judges in the country
So,
that head up federal judiciaries that
so
are the bulwark. It's not the Supreme Court. If we had justices on the Supreme Court, a majority of justices that could back up those federal judges in their rulings against the Trump administration
yeah,
policies, then we could have, I think, a much stronger measure of
yeah.
comfort
Robert,
because we know that we can elect new representatives, during the midterms coming up, like John Ossoff, and people that we hope will better represent us in Congress. But the judges and the judgeships at the Supreme Court nominations, those are lifetime
they're
positions,
there for a long time.
And so if the federal judiciary below the Supreme Court can galvanize enough of a movement to oppose the Trump's the Trump administration's decrees, because let's face it, that's what they are.
Yeah.
They are decrees. They are not, this is not a person who's trying to rule us. Oh, I'm sorry, who's trying to lead us. This is a person who's trying to rule us.
Yeah.
Those are two very different things. Now, what does that have to do with kitchen table economics? Well, it has a lot to do with
It
that
has a lot to do.
because it's not just about the price of groceries, although there's a connection in there. So one of the reasons that we as Americans are struggling economically around our kitchen tables is because of near monopolies in different places. So, what's the most important, well, in your mind, Pat, what are the what are the two biggest things around the kitchen table that parents worry about?
Paying the mortgage and paying for food.
So paying for the roof
Yep.
and paying for food.
Yeah.
Well, in our country, we've gone from having a veritable panoply, a wide, diverse variety of companies that bring food to our table. In other words, supermarkets. Okay. Now, guess how many there are? Guess how many supermarket chains there are
Yeah.
in our
I
country?
don't know what the number is, but
Five.
five,
There's five.
five major ones.
That's it.
Yeah.
From coast to coast, north to south. That is a pseudo monopoly.
And
So,
it goes into the other industries as well. And of
and
course, that's going to
not many of our listeners may know, but when the power of the market gets in the hands of that few number of organizations, the ability for competition that would drive prices down to a reasonable level starts to disappear. It's not a total monopoly, okay?
yeah.
It's a near monopoly. And if anyone thinks that those CEOs aren't like talking to each other when no one is looking,
Yeah.
which is about as easy as it can ever be these days. You know, I, and it's not just that.
And
It's
I had this discussion with somebody. I had a discussion with somebody that, okay, that five major companies, okay, running, it doesn't matter whether it's food or anything else, that they're not going to, that they're going to keep prices down because they've got now volume and they can keep prices down. And it was the argument versus a local one, which is Kroger, and they try to join Albertsons, and
They tried to
right,
merge, yeah.
okay. And the argument was that that they could by being that way they could be more competitive to Walmart. There's no way that they're going to be more competitive. They, if anything, when they control more of a market, to your point, they're going to just keep prices high, if not
Yeah,
raise prices, because they know that they'll get more profit out of that than they will
yeah.
in trying to volume lower the prices to be competitive to
You
Walmart.
have fewer as a consumer, you have fewer places to choose, and so you can't get the cheapest price. So, um, and this and why is this happening? It's because corporations have been able to
Yeah.
lobby Congress to, in effect, eliminate antitrust litigation.
Yes.
So, for those that don't know in our audience, antitrust laws are there to break up monopolies. They're to make the market more competitive. And the people that are against this, the corporations, their lawyers, the lobbyists, and their fan clubs fed by, right-wing media,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, is, they call it socialism. Well, you know what? Capitalism, when it's done well and right, makes sure that the market is fair and competitive
Yeah.
so that the consumer, who is the last one consulted, okay, because we vote with our dollars,
And and I
the
don't remember.
consumer
I don't.
has the most
Yeah.
options and therefore has more choice.
I don't remember her name, but in the Biden administration, there was a woman that was in charge of uh, there was the department that was doing just that. In fact, she was fighting corporate monopolies. I can't remember.
Khan,
Okay, yeah,
not to be confused with the Wrath of Khan, a famous Star Trek movie.
and
Won't get into that.
right,
But Lena Khan is her name. And yeah, she was a bulldog.
with Bulldog,
And corporations hated her,
right,
which means if the I got news for you folks out there in the blogosphere or whatever we're doing, the podcast sphere. If corporations hate someone who's on your side, you should be on their side. You should be on that woman's side. She's sitting there fighting for you.
and conservatives because they get all their money from those corporations, and all of
Yeah.
the lobbyists were down on her from the
Oh
beginning.
yeah.
They were just happy as
Well, that
anything to
and
see
the
her go.
Consumer Protection Division, which was, of course, uh, started by Elizabeth. Oh crap, my brain. Anyway,
Anyway,
point is, and I'm sorry I can't remember that. Everybody, it was a senior brain fart. Point is that if there are people in government that are working hard for you, you should be standing up for them because they want you to be successful.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
So, um, you know, your kitchen table matters. Your vote matters. And one of the ways you can vote is by being well informed and buying from companies and operations that are local and that care about you.
And we're sorry that we were more positive at the beginning, and we've scaring the hell out of you. And to some extent, I don't think that's a bad thing at right now. I think you need to be scared, and so that you do something and just don't sit around, twiddle your thumbs, and wait for that better time to come along in 6 months. It's just
Well,
you got to
yeah,
do something now.
we all got to be doing something.
Yeah.
So,
So anyway, we'll sign off. This is Pat,
and Greg,
and that'll do it for today.
take care, everybody.